Okay, everybody. Welcome to this week's video podcast for environmental science. Um, what I would like you to do now is to watch the deserts video from the Planet Earth video series. The link is shown here. I'll give you 20 seconds to copy it down. I'll also send it to you in an email. So let's just wait for a minute. Okay. Then what I want you to do, as we do with all of these videos, is to fill out the Deserts video questionnaire that accompanies the video, and then I will review in class with you um, the appropriate responses to the answer blanks. So moving on from there, we want to talk just for a moment about deserts. They occur at 30 degrees north and south latitude, and they occupy 20% of the Earth's land surface. In these biomes, water loss exceeds precipitation. So what we have here is very little available water. Desert soils are usually low in organic matter because there's not a lot of plant growth in deserts, and are sometimes called lithosols, which means that stone or minerals predominate the soil makeup. However, the soils under certain desert shrubs may contain large amounts of organic matter, but these are few and far between. Because we have so little primary productivity in the desert, due primarily to the lack of water and to some extent the low soil fertility, um, we can't support an extensive food web. And so you don't see a lot of organisms in the desert. And those that you do see are going to be adapted to live in an ecosystem that has very little available water. And so you're going to see adaptations designed to hold on to as much water as possible. So as an example, a lot of desert animals are only active at night because it's cooler in the nighttime and you don't lose as much water to the environment. Plants that you see in the desert tend to store a lot of liquid in their flesh. They're called succulents. As an example, if you open up a cactus, you'll see a lot of cactus juice inside that particular plant, and that's designed for the plant to be able to make it in between the infrequent rain showers that occur in the desert so that it can survive. You'll also tend to see very shallow but very broad root systems because the water table in desert soils is virtually non-existent. So again, life will fill a vacuum, and what we see here are adaptations designed to manage to live long enough to reproduce in this low humidity environment, low precipitation environment. The plant cover in deserts ranges from sparse to absent. Animal abundance is low, but biodiversity may be very high. So you might have a lot of different species of organisms in the desert, but there won't be very many of them. The population numbers will be relatively low. You're going to see a lot of behavioral adaptations that allow organisms to persist in a desert environment. Activity patterns and body orientation to avoid water loss are just two examples of this. The next figure we're going to look at is going to show you a climate diagram from two hot deserts and one cold desert. And what you want to notice are that drought conditions prevail during all months, and that during some months average temperatures will exceed 30 degrees centigrade. Now, to give you guys an idea of what that is in Fahrenheit, that's like in the mid to high 80s for us. Shade temperatures greater than 56 degrees have been recorded in the deserts of North Africa and North America, and that's for us, around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Um, However, some deserts are cold, okay, but they still lack precipitation. As an example, the Gobi Desert in Central Asia has temperatures that may fall to minus 20 degrees centigrade. And again, to give you an idea where that is, 32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 degrees centigrade. So you're talking at minus 20 in the single digits to around 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And so this is just a look at a climate diagram from some of these different desert biomes. And again, first thing that jumps out at you is where they occur, okay, 30 degrees north and south latitude. Wherever you have a landmass, you're going to see a desert, okay. We've got two examples from north of the equator, and we've got one example from Australia, south of the equator. But what jumps out at you immediately is that the temperature line is above the precipitation line, and so the tendency is to lose water to the ecosystem, and as a result we have to have behavioral and physiological adaptations that allow plants and animals to hold on to their water as much as possible. Um, in the hot deserts, the temperature is above freezing all year round. You can see that it peaks in the summertime, and it's a little bit lower in the winter, but not too much. Okay, not too much. 40 degrees up here. That's close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so you're talking pretty warm in the summertime. 20 degrees, you're talking, in the 70s, okay, in the winter. But again, notice that the temperature line is above the precipitation line all year round. Here's an example from a cold desert, okay, and what you're seeing here um, is this is the Gobi Desert, and what you have are drought periods during the summer, and you have extremely cold winters. Now, you might look at this diagram immediately and say, well, look, the precipitation line is above the temperature line during the winter months, and that's true. However, what you have to remember is that these temperatures are well below freezing, and so the moisture that's available is going to be primarily as snow and ice, and it's not going to be available for plant growth, and as a result, you're not going to support a large number of plants. There's going to be very little primary productivity. As a result, the numbers of plants and animals are going to be relatively sparse. If we were to take a look at a climate diagram from the Australian outback, what you would see is essentially the same climate diagram as you see for these two examples of desert biomes, except remember that the winter and summer months would be reversed. But other than that, you would see a temperature plot that's above the moisture plot, and you would see very sparse plant cover and very few numbers of plants and animals. Okay, so this is what highlights the desert biome. Now remember, why does this occur? This occurs because as the air becomes less and less humid as it rains around the equator, and as it continues to lose moisture to the tropical dry forests and the savannas, eventually what happens is that the air becomes so dry that when it reaches the desert regions, all it has to do is soak up any moisture from the land. And so this is why you tend to have very arid conditions in deserts. What happens as we continue to move towards the poles is that the air, which has picked up moisture from the desert regions, is now going to run into cooler air that's coming down from the polar regions, and that increase in humidity combined with the clash in temperatures is going to result now in a biome that's perfect for Mediterranean and seasonal forests, as we'll see in just a moment. The desert is one of the few biomes that's increasing its range primarily due to human activity, and our challenge is to stop the spread of the deserts that comes at the expense of the other biomes. If we establish a balanced use of deserts, we can safeguard their inhabitants, both human and non-human. Our next biome is Mediterranean woodland and shrubland, and this occurs in all continents except for Antarctica. A climate is cool and moist in the fall, winter, and spring, but it can be hot and dry in the summertime. The fragile soils have moderate fertility. The reason for this, though, is that the increase in rainfall, the increase in precipitation, provides the ability for some plant growth to occur. If you have some plant growth, you have some primary productivity, you can support a food web, and as a result, as organisms die and they decompose, they're going to contribute to the organic component of the soil, and that again will increase the amount of water-soluble nitrogen and phosphorus containing compounds that will be available now for plant growth to occur. Trees and shrubs are typically evergreen, and this is an adaptation to survive drought periods that happen primarily um, uh, during the summer months. Many plants have well-developed mutualistic relationships with microbes that fix atmospheric nitrogen. And the reason that this is important is because atmospheric nitrogen isn't available for use biologically by plants and animals. It has to be converted into a nitrogen compound that's water soluble, and as a result, what we see primarily is these bacteria that live amongst the roots of these plants um, that can take the atmospheric nitrogen and convert it into these nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia containing compounds, and that is available then for the roots to take up and for the plants to grow. Many of the plants are fire resistant, and this is due to frequent wildfires that occur throughout this biome. The adaptations to survive these frequent wildfires are thick bark on the trees and shrubs. These produce oils that burn quick so that seeds can resprout very, very rapidly. In fact, there are some species of plants in these biomes whose seeds will not sprout unless they've been through a wildfire. And this is nature's way again of getting rid of the dead wood and allowing new growth to occur. There's a long history of human intrusion, and this is due primarily to its utility as um, a source of lumber production and to some extent crop production. A lot of this has been cleared for agriculture. The increased fertility content in the soil allows certain commercially viable crops to grow, and as a result, Mediterranean woodland and shrubland is frequently used for farming and animal husbandry. And this is just a peek at some of the climate diagrams from these biomes. And what you see are falls and springs where the precipitation line is above the temperature line, and so here you have available water for plant growth. Okay, and again, look at the temperature line here. We're above freezing year round. Okay, so we have these wet falls and springs, and then we have drought during the summer months. But because these plants are adapted to conserve their moisture, because they're evergreens, and the needles on evergreens are basically modified leaves covered in a thick cuticle, and that allows the plants to hold on to more of their moisture so that they can survive these drought periods. That they manage to last through this drought period in the summertime and make it to the next fall when the water comes down again and the plants are able to grow. And so we can support a more complex food web than we could in, say, the desert biome. Okay. Now, what is happening as we continue to move towards the poles is that the air masses are going to continue to pick up moisture, and eventually we're going to get sufficient precipitation to have what we call the seasonal forests and grasslands. And you're going to see a little example of the grasslands here in the Great Plains video from Planet Earth. Again, it's available at the same website that the desert video was available. So I'll give you guys 20 seconds to copy down that website if you haven't already. Remember that I'll have sent it to you in an email. Okay, and then what I want you to do is, of course, fill out the video questionnaire as you watch the video, and we will check your questionnaires in class next time we're together, and that'll prepare you for the quiz, which will be the first order of business after we've gone through your questionnaires and made sure that you've got the right responses. So, with that said, I'll see everybody in class next week, and have a wonderful weekend.